voice in this room, so you can be seated. AWHA America is an initiative to end homelessness in the United States by 2020. We are made up of service providers, government officials, philanthropy, young people, and researchers with a common goal. It's one that we agreed to in Houston this past this past fall. That goal is here in 2020, prevent and end homelessness among young people. And if we can't prevent homelessness, ensure that experiences are brief and only happen one time. We're not an organization, and that's important. We're an initiative, and we have one purpose. We have incredible leaders who are the steering committee. They are a coalition of the willing, and I'm so grateful for those folks who are willing. There's over 50 organizations who have been involved so far, and federal partners are at the table informing the work. I've said that we are at an important time. That's why we are gathering, and that's evidenced by a few things. Local communities are creating plans, and they are working together in new ways. Advocacy is involved at the table, and they are doing their work more effectively than ever before. Researchers are helping us understand what is needed. The federal government is working together in new ways. That is no small thing, as evidenced by the conversation that we're going to have later today. And that's really only part of the work. Philanthropy has invested in the work of AWHA America. There are 4 foundations that stepped up to support this work, as well as many investments in local communities. So that's the moment. And if for those of you that have been doing this work for a long time have a sense of more people are paying attention to a thing that you've cared about for a long time, that's totally true. And I think that it's natural, if you've been doing this work for a long time, to feel sort of nonplussed. And I'll tell you that I have been doing this work for 15 years, and that is a blink of an eye to many of you who are more experienced in this room. It's also not very impressive if you're a young person who's experienced homelessness your whole life. But I'll speak from my own experience, and I'll say that if we do not use this moment to work together differently, if we don't link arms together in new ways now, we are blowing a once-in-a-movement opportunity to do incredible good for young people. And that's the invitation in this room today. So what is our work in the coming year? So, sounds good, great, would love to do that. What does the work of AWHA America actually mean? What is our to-do list? It is a collective to-do list. And I'm going to tell you about the efforts that we have in the coming year to give you a sense of what AWHA America is, what the collective invitation here is. We have activities related to policy, practice, and communications on our to-do list. Under policy, we want to speak in a collective voice about what's needed. In practice, we want to launch 100-day challenges in local communities. And in communications, we want to launch a national communications plan to understand what youth homelessness is in local communities. So I'm going to go through each one of those in a little bit of detail. We need to speak in a collective voice. We'll do this by identifying actions and policy necessary to inform the next Congress and administration. It's difficult to understand us and hear us if we don't speak in a common voice. Youth homelessness is complex because family trauma, homophobia, racism, transphobia, adolescence, to name a few, are all incredibly complex things. So it's difficult to hear us as a movement if we don't speak in one voice. So that's the work to do. I think the good news is it's difficult to be a teenager, and we all remember what that was like. So our issue is an inherently bipartisan issue that everybody can get behind. Second thing is that we want to accelerate efforts in local communities. So today, AWHA America officially launched. So I'm excited about that. We announced working with Rapid Results Institute to launch 3 100-day challenges in local communities. So 3 communities are going to lead the nation, take on a challenge, set what seems to be an unreasonable goal, and then strive for that goal. There's more information on the website. Rapid Results Institute are like pro coaches and change experts that walk alongside communities. And a little bit of context about this, it's an approach that's been very successful in veteran and single adult efforts. So communities set a goal, they strive for that goal, and what they learn through that process then gets used to inform efforts with additional resources, for instance, from HUD as part of the demonstration that Anna will talk about. So it's incredibly possible. The third thing is a communications campaign. We know that we're going to have some new resources by which to do this. The Voices of Youth Count is an incredible effort underway. We can use that and leverage that to talk about the issue of youth homelessness. The True Colors Fund is doing some message testing on national messages about homeless youth. We can use and leverage that, as well as partnership with USICH and really leveraging best practices and disseminating those. So that's the work in the coming year. That's why we need all of you. It's a lot to do. In our policy development, in the work with 100-day challenges, in communications work, we are going to be learning from young people and having them work as collaborators with our federal partners and our steering committee members. So in all of those efforts, that's what we're doing. I acknowledge that some of you in this room may not believe that it's possible to end youth homelessness. And if you believe that, I actually think that we have data that suggests that it's not only possible, but that we have done it. So work in veteran homelessness has shown us that with a coordinated community response and with sufficient resources, we can end homelessness. So given that it is in fact possible, I want to ask us to approach this problem a little differently. I want to ask for a collective reframe in this room. So many of us, and myself completely included, we've tried to talk about the condition of homelessness to try to garner support to address it. So we've tried to talk about the trauma that young people experience, to even see that young people exist in communities. And I don't think we ever do that right. I don't think we ever do that quite right. And the stories that we heard this morning, that is the work done right. Young people telling their own stories. And I think that we do need to talk about the condition of homelessness. But I think the story that I can tell right, and the story that all of you in this room can tell right, is the collective vision that we are driving toward. What we can tell right is what is our hope for young people, and what's the vision that we're striving for. So the invitation that I have to all of you today is to hold lightly the stories that you may hear from a 15-year-old or a 24-year-old. Maybe they're your own stories, maybe you're seeing them in these programs every day. And to hold those stories lightly. And as you do that, turn to grab just your hearts full of the vision that we are driving for. And the question for you is, what does that look like for you? What would change in your role? What would change in the way that you show up? And what does that look like for us as a movement, to show up with our heart full of the vision of ending youth homelessness and driving towards solutions? I want to tell you that when I think of that vision, I think about families that are supported to stay together, if that's at all possible, because that's what I would want for my own family. And if that is not possible, there are emergency responses in every community that are like a fire station, because the house is on fire, kids, actually. And that those emergency responses operate immediately to get kids back to a safe life. And what would it be if you were a shelter worker and you saw a kid for 2 days? What would that be like? How would we change? How would we show up for them? So that's, I think, the future that we're driving towards. And as I close, I'll tell you this. I had dinner with a friend of mine, and this last Friday. And as I was talking with him, before he was my friend, I was actually his GED instructor. And he was experiencing homelessness in Seattle. He was much younger, I was much younger. And as we were talking, I was expressing my fears. He now lives in Tacoma, he got his GED, he has a cat, he takes bicycle camping. I don't know how it works, but he's awesome. So he said this, I was expressing my fears, and I was saying, what if we don't do it? What if we don't do it? What if we're not brave enough to do this? That's the fear. And he sent me this text afterward. I asked him if I could just read it to all of you. He says, remember the hard days where change seems bleak. I think this is a message to all of us. Remember that you put yourself in a position that helps prompt change. Remember that change is already happening and that you are a huge part of that. And most of all, remind ourselves that our only purpose, remind ourselves and each other, our only purpose is to improve the things for the young people that come behind.